Legend has it there is a land where knights battle for honor, where dragons fly through the air, where you can experience your wildest dreams or your darkest nightmares. It's time to live the legend this weekend at Camelot.
Hello and welcome to the second video in my Remembering series here on Theme Park Worldwide. You may have seen the first one of these that was uploaded a few weeks ago here on the channel. That was all about Pirate Adventure, a dark ride that closed at Drayton Manor. In this video, I'm going to be talking about much more than just one ride, but a full theme park that's no longer with us anymore. And that is, of course, Camelot Theme Park. Now, it was located in Charnock Richard in Lancashire here in the UK, and it opened back in 1983 and closed in 2012. And I had many visits to the park, starting off from like the mid-2000s, all the way through until its final year of operation. So in this video, I'm going to share a few facts and a bit of the history, but more my memories from going to this park, the things that really shone out to me. I thought, you know what, that was fantastic. Other things that I thought, actually, maybe that's the reason why the park's no longer with us anymore. And just go into more detail about my thoughts and memories from going to Camelot Theme Park. The good thing is, I actually went to the park during the first year of Theme Park Worldwide. That was actually the last year of Camelot. And I got loads of video footage that's all available to view on the channel, but I've never done any narration about it before. So this video will be quite special in a way. I'm going to put in some of that footage and sort of doing a bit of narration about my memories and, filming on that ride and what I saw and what I thought all about it. And my genuine thoughts on it, because obviously I never filmed the vlog from there because they didn't exist at the time on the channel. Crazy, isn't it, how much things evolve and develop over time. But yeah, so let's sort of go back way to the start then, for when I first went to Camelot Theme Park. It was in the early 2000s, my parents took me there. I've mentioned them a lot on the channel before, but they got me into theme parks. They took me to all of these places. And I went there, in the early 2000s to Camelot, and the first thing that you remember from visiting there, and I'm sure anyone can also agree with this when you go, that impressive entrance, you can close your eyes when you think about Camelot. The first thing you see, or at least I do, is that huge entrance. It looked absolutely stunning. It was a castle, and it had 4 turrets on there, 2 large, 2 small. It had the logo on there, and it had just a very authentic feel. You're going through the entrance turnstiles, like where they check your tickets, and you'd sort of walk in there. It was like going into this castle, like courtyard, and then you had the main castle in front of you. It was just so well done. It was a big white castle. It was all painted up really nice, and of course, in the early years, it was very well maintained. It looked great. You got to think the park opened in 1983. I didn't first go until the early 2000s, so that's a big gap there where, of course, I didn't have anything to do with Camelot. I didn't even know it existed. I was just a kid. So you've got to think that these are my memories from coming in from the early 2000s. You may have some different ones, so share them down below in the video comments. But this entrance was something really special. So, of course, along with it being just a normal entrance to the park, you also had an attraction there, what took you down into the main part of the park. So that's what made Camelot really different. And from my memory here about this, you sort of had this ride called Pendragon's Plunge, which is a dinghy slide, and the kids could go on that and it'd take you down into the entrance, like to the main part of the park. And then the adults, if they wanted, they could walk down the slope next to it. There was a ramp just there and they could walk down that. They didn't have to go on the ride. So, I thought that was a really nice thing about the park. And it was the whole feel of it, the fact you were on these different levels. The entrance was up here, the main section of the park with all those different rides was here, and then as you later went into the rest of the park, you go back up through a forest and uphill again. So it had a really unique layout, Camelot, something that I really do remember. The second thing that really shines out when I look back on my memories from Camelot is the entertainment. Going back to the main entrance again, on a morning when you came in and at night when you was on your way back out to the car park, there was entertainment going on. You had people juggling out there. There was a jester, there was knights. You could meet people up at the exit and entrance of the park. And I thought that was brilliant. That's something what a lot of our parks in the UK really sort of lack from now. And entertainment in general is not a massive thing at theme parks in this country. Of course, it is outside of the parks with theatres and that sort of stuff. But in terms of at parks, there's not loads of entertainment offerings. Don't get me wrong, there is quite a few, but there's not loads. It's not full of entertainment like I think parks abroad do it. And I think that's a big reason why, a lot of our parks sort of, don't go down the entertainment route. Parks do it abroad so much better. So if it was to be done in this country, they've got to spend a lot more money to do it as good as some of these other parks. But yeah, you had this jousting show, and it was in a jousting arena down in that main section of the park. So as I mentioned, you picture this, you're walking down that hillside, and then you come into this main area where you've got a few different rides of the park, but then you've got this show venue, this arena, huge covered over arena, or at least it was covered for you watching it, not for the performers. And on there you'd have this big jousting show. There was a big sort of chair up at the back, and it'd all sort of go into sort of King Arthur and like the Knights of the Round Table, and all the theme of the park, Camelot, would come into it. And it was brilliant. This jester on there was great. He was there for many years. I remember seeing him as I was growing up and thinking, he's been here for a few years. You can just remember them faces, can't you? And he was fantastic, this jester. And he'd be in there getting all the crowd warmed up, getting people on the different sides for the joust, what was about to happen. And it was amazing. Of course, they sold all the merchandise, like all the swords and everything as well. So everyone was really getting involved in chanting and clapping along. What an atmosphere. At the time, it was the best theme park entertainment in the UK, I'd say. I think it was absolutely brilliant. And, what I really appreciated with that, yes, the park was sort of going down for a few years in terms of attendance, but they never really cut back on the jousting show. They just kept it going, kept it just as good. I remember watching it in 2012 before the park closed for the last time, and then seeing it when I was a kid, and it was just as good. It was a fantastic all-round show that I really, really enjoyed. There was also like a magic show I remember seeing there. There was a Birds of Prey show from what I can remember. There was a lot of entertainment on offer, and like I say, what really made it was the fact they brought characters and entertainment up to the entrance and exit, for when you were coming in and going out of the park. Let's move on to some of the rides then, some of the most memorable rides. So like I say, I went to this park in the early 2000s before the likes of Nightmare was installed, and I'll be talking more about that as the video progresses. But yeah, a ride that really just sticks in my mind when I think of Camelot when I first went was the Rack. Like, can anybody else relate to that? Comment down below. The Rack was a Vekoma Canyon trip. That's the actual official name of the ride. And from a non-technical point of view, you'd sit in it, and it would just sort of swing and do this sort of motion. And it was really, really good. Like, it was quite an intense ride, but it was a really nice attraction. I enjoyed that. Along with that, there was the Venom indoor roller coaster. Now, this was a powered coaster located up near the entrance to the park. And, I remember going on that. I believe it was called something else before, the Beast maybe, I think it was. Something like that. It was before, but I only did it as Venom. And that was really good. It may have only been a small powered coaster for families, but it was indoors and it was an enclosed coaster, and that was really good fun. That got took out, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people stopped visiting the park. That was a lot of classic moments were made on that attraction. A lot of people experienced it and enjoyed it, and it's a shame when they took that out. Something else I really remember is the Gauntlet. I don't know why I remember it so much, because it was a pinfire looping coaster. Nothing special, but I do remember it, the Gauntlet coaster, because I remember seeing it and thinking, I'm terrified, but went on it, and yeah, it was a looping coaster. It was used a lot on their branding back then, because that was the signature thrill ride. You'd had other rides that, I didn't get to experience before, such as Tower of Terror. That was a Schwarzkopf coaster that they had. The same layout, I believe, as Scorpion at Busch Gardens, Tampa Bay. It was that basically, but called Tower of Terror. It had a big bit of theming around it, and that looked great, but of course I didn't get to experience that. I hadn't been at the park at that point. I was only a little kid when that was still operating. But yeah, so the Gauntlet was the signature ride for me. Along with that, something else I remember, and this stayed all the way through until the end of the park's life, of course, was the Whirlwind. This was a marathon spinning coaster. I really enjoyed that. That got relocated to Skyline Park in Germany, I believe. But yeah, I really enjoyed going on that. At the time, I thought that was fantastic. It was great to get on there. Now, along with that, of course, the park actually had 5 different roller coasters when it closed in 2012. That doesn't count the rides that were removed before, new coasters coming in, old ones going out. It closed with 5 different roller coasters. One of those being Nightmare, which was a zero coaster, with a Schwarzkopf layout. Jetline at Gröna Lund in Sweden. If you've seen that ride, it's the same layout as Nightmare, and it's a spectacular ride. I loved it. It was really, really intense, and it was sad actually going there a few weeks ago and seeing the demolition of this ride. Now, of course, if you want to see more footage like this, it's sad to watch, but there is a full video we put on just a couple of weeks ago here on the channel, because last month, early February, the ride was completely demolished. It's no longer existing. It's not been relocated anywhere else. It's been completely scrap metal, because it had been left there for too long. Nobody saved it. Southport Pleasureland tried to save that coaster. However, the park wanted too much money for it. The owners of the land wanted too much money. but now they've had to pay for it to be demolished. So I bet they just wish they'd let them sell it now, you know, so they didn't have to pay all this money to have it demolished. But yeah, that was a big moment for that park, nightmare. And when that came in, you know, I remember thinking, blimey, you know, this is a big investment for the park. On the branding for it, it had like a chair that, you know, you'd sit on like this chair. Obviously, it was nothing like the actual coaster train, and it had a red track on the image as well. So I thought, oh, we're going to see this red track. But no, you know, it kept that brown colour scheme that wasn't the most pleasant, but I tell you what, it rode brilliantly. It came from Japan originally, and over in Japan it had like all this rock work and buildings around it, like all miniature buildings on a hillside. Looked incredible, and then it came out and did that big overbank that you've seen. It did that out of this rock structure, you know, so that's why it looks just like it did. But yeah, it's a shame Camelot couldn't have put a bit of theming in. However, you know, it was a big ride for them, and I really enjoyed it. Of course, we saw the Gauntlet go, the Pinfire looping coaster. So this was the big signature ride. The rack had already gone at this point, you know, to make way for Nightmare. So yeah, I remember it being there, and it was a huge attraction. It really was. It was fantastic. You've seen a bit of on-ride footage there as well, all my own footage that I captured during my last visit there. Whirlwind, like I say, the spinning coaster, you know, that stayed all the way through until the end of the park's life, and that opened in the early 2000s there. They had a Junior Dragon coaster. This was a little powered coaster. However, with that, it actually went to Oakwood Theme Park, so you can still actually ride that now. But yeah, it's located in their Neverland area. This was located on a bit of quite out of the way at Camelot, on a bit of an open field. Didn't really have any theming and stuff with it. But yeah, you had that little coaster. There was Caterpillar Capers. That was a Big Apple, so nothing spectacular. But yeah, they did have a Big Apple coaster. That got relocated to Gulliver's World for anybody that wants to go and give that one a ride. Finally, a really special ride they had as a coaster, and this was Dragon Flyer. Now, this was spectacular in my opinion because it was a diesel-powered coaster. You know, there was, I think, only 2 of these actually made, and it was hilarious. You actually had someone sat in the front who was driving this thing, you know, and it was a diesel coaster. It made that, you know, that noise it was going round, you know, and it was fantastic. Like, you remember sitting behind the driver and thinking, what a job, just keeping going around this layout. It might not have had massive drops and stuff in it and things, but what it was fantastic, you know, and it went round on this circuit, all around, as I was mentioning earlier, that section, what's like the lower main part of the park, like where the jousting show was. There was the Ferris wheel, Pendragon's Plunge, the dinghy slide, there was a pirate ship, you know, and it went all around that section there, and it was a really good fun ride. I really enjoyed it. I had many rides on Dragon Flyer. That's still SPNO at the moment, so that's the only of these coasters now what's still actually sat there at Camelot. The train went to Southport Pleasureland, and I thought maybe they were going to do something more with it, but it was just a photo opportunity, sadly. And you can still see it just sat there on the hillside, or you could last year anyway. But yeah, in terms of other major rides, what they had at the park, Excalibur 2, that was a Fabry Evolution. Again, that went to Southport Pleasureland. They tried to buy as much as they could. Oakwood and Southport Pleasureland bought a lot of the old rides from Camelot. It's just a shame that neither of them could obviously get Nightmare because the cost, what they wanted, that they were charging for it for an old ride, to relocate it as well with all them costs would have been extortionate. But yeah, like a lot of these rides, you know, Excalibur 2, it was nothing spectacular. It was very uncomfortable. I wasn't a massive fan, but you know, it was a big thrill ride for the park. They had the Galleon pirate ship. Again, that went to Southport. It no longer operates there, but it's like a photo opportunity, like a planter. So you can still go and see that if you want to, if you go to Southport. But yeah, that was you know, a good fun pirate ship, and that was located, you know, down in this main section of the park where there was a lot of different rides and experiences for everyone. Along with that, you had Dungeons of Doom. Now, this was a ghost train. It was a full dark ride. It was located on the top section of the park up by Nightmare, and it was like right next door to like another tent area. It had a Wimpy in there. I mean, do Wimpy even still exist? Do you see many Wimpies out there? I don't think you do these days, not like KFC and stuff, but yeah, it was located up there. And what I remember from this was that it was just a terrible ghost train, but it had a couple of good effects in there. Like, you know, it was a very standard ride system, nothing spectacular, but what it had was a couple of good effects in there. And there is a full POV here on the channel that's definitely worth watching. Of course, the camera equipment that I used back then was nowhere near as good as what I'm using now, but at least I've captured something. It's more the sounds, and you can get that, and I definitely recommend watching that so you can see it. But yeah, Dungeons of Doom was certainly an interesting experience at the park, and from what we're aware, that building is actually still standing. in Camelot Theme Park to this day. And of course, you've seen some footage throughout this that we captured a few weeks ago, and that was during our visit to see Camelot, see Nightmare being demolished at Camelot, and we went all around the perimeter of the park, got as much footage as we could do so you could see what these rides look like as of February 2020. So you've seen that footage. It's only a few weeks old as you're watching it at the time of upload, from all these rides and what we could see of the park. Of course, we stayed outside on the boundary. Many people have been inside the park, but of course we wouldn't go against the rules. It's breaking the law at the end of the day going in there. We wouldn't do that. But we went around the outside and saw what we could from there to look into the park. And, you know, it was sad what we saw, but I'm just glad we managed to capture some more images and make this video to sort of celebrate the history of Camelot and my memories from going there. Pendragon's Plunge I've already spoke about, but like I said, that was the dinghy slide. That was one of the water rides at the park. But you also had a log flume attraction there as well, the Camelot Cascade. That went to Oakwood and that operates in Neverland now there if you want to experience it. But not a bad log flume, only a one-drop wonder, but it was a good ride. I do remember going on it. It had all rock work around it, and just next to it, that's where you had like the caterpillar coaster there, like the Big Apple. But yeah, you know, that's a sort of a bit of an overview of the rides from the park. The reason why I think it started to go a bit downhill and didn't go as well, now of course this is from me looking at it. It was a long time before investment went in before Nightmare. They went quite a few years without anything going in at all. Bear in mind, Blackpool Pleasure Beach were always investing in stuff. Alton Towers, two big competitors that aren't actually that far away. I think that and sort of a lack of advertising and poor advertising. I remember seeing some of the adverts for it and they were terrible. It really wasn't done very well from a marketing point of view. And I think that was the death of the park. I really do. The fact that, you know, it went through lots of different ownership over the years. You know, like I say, I won't sort of go into those details, but went through a lot of ownership over the years, got passed down through a lot of people, and it ended up being taken over by this company that wanted to turn it into a housing development. However, as we know, it's still not turned into that, mainly due to planning permission. There's some greenbelt land there as well. They're really struggling. They're saying that it's going to be, got to stay as a leisure site, which of course is fantastic news, but I want to see something happen with it. Something needs to happen now, or they may as well just build the houses on there as far as I'm concerned. You know, they need to secure something on there for in the next couple of years, or not bother at all and just get houses on there, in my opinion. As much as it makes me sad saying that, I think we'd all agree that it's much better having people living somewhere in a house than it is having a big empty space doing nothing. So, you know, that's my reason why I think it closed anyway. Lack of investment, poor marketing, and just being passed down through lots of different management that really didn't have the passion that the original owners had for the park. Other things that I remember was the food. The food there was terrible. I mean, you know me, I'm a fussy eater, but I spoke about that Wimpy a couple of minutes ago, but the food offerings at Camelot were awful. They weren't great at all. You know, I wasn't a big fan of that. Yeah, and just in general, the food offering could have been really improved. But overall, it was a really nice park that stuck by that theme of Camelot and King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table. It brought all that together in a wonderfully themed experience that I really enjoyed and I do really miss. Of course, Nightmare for me was the highlight of the park, but then you've got the Jousting show that was just as much up there, to be honest. You had the spinning coaster, some flat rides, a dark ride, water rides. It had a good lineup of attractions, and it was a shame when it did close. But there you go, they're my memories. You know, I went there many times, yeah, and yeah, I had a fantastic time, and I've got their memories in my head. I've got plenty of videos about it on the channel, which I'm really pleased about. So glad I filmed on that day. If I'd have made the decision to just think, oh, you know, I'm not going to film these this year, I'll save it till next year, I'd have never got the footage. So I'm so glad that I just kept on going and filmed that day and got their memories, because else I would never have had them before. And of course, filming this video and sharing all their memories with you guys. But I would love to know, what are your memories from Camelot Theme Park? I mean, you've got to think mine start from like the early 2000s. You guys have got memories probably from, you know, back when it opened in 1983 onwards. What was it like in the 90s? That seemed like it was the best time for that park. So comment down below, what was your favourite ride? What's your favourite memory from going to Camelot Theme Park in Lancashire here in the UK. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching another remembering video here in this series on Theme Park Worldwide. There'll be more of these coming up throughout the year, so stay tuned for more. And if you've got any suggestions on what you'd like to see, of course, keep them coming down below in the video comments. I'm Sean Sandbrook, thanks for watching Theme Park Worldwide, and that means it's time to cue those credits. See you in the next video.